Greetings and salutations. Let's see. Let's say happy Thursday, everyone. Vince Robinson here with another edition of Open Door Live. And I have a very special guest with me. She is Imani Capri, and she is a candidate for the city council president of Maple Heights. Now, just a little background. Imani and I go way back, and I've watched her grow from a young person, a small person, into a grown A woman. She's been doing some great things with her life, and this is another step in her journey. So, with that, I'd like to welcome to Open Door Live, Miss Imani Capri. As you can see, she's behind the wheel of the car, and we just talked about Mercury retrograde and communication snafus that occur with that. But everything is good. She's with us. She's on her way home, and so I guess when she gets there, if we're still having this conversation, we can continue the conversation on camera. But with all of that said, welcome to Open Door Live, Imani Capri.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being able to be here with you today. I literally thought I was going to be sitting across from you.
Yeah. Well, this was an easier way to accomplish what we needed to accomplish today, and it's kind of ironic because as soon as I finish this, I'll be headed to Larchmere Arts to do a rehearsal for a concert that's going to happen tomorrow. So with that, tomorrow night, Larchmere
Yes.
Arts, 7 o'clock. Her name is Acacia. She's a beautiful singer. She's a very gifted and talented singer, and she will be my guest as I play piano and she sings. But that's another topic for another live. Right now, we're focused on Imani Capri. So let's just cut to the chase. You are doing quite a few things. You are kind of on a hiatus from your radio gig because you do two radio programs on a radio station here in Cleveland. But because of that, and because of the complications that exist within the FCC and requirements that equal time be given to candidates for elective office, you haven't really been able to do that show. But in this platform, we can have a conversation about anything that we want to have a conversation about. So we're going to talk about you and specifically your quest to become the city council president of Maple Heights. So let me just start by asking, how did it come about that you decided to jump into the political realm?
Well, you know that saying that some things find you versus you finding it? That is pretty much what happened with me last year. Right before COVID really exploded, I was literally on an airplane flying back to Ohio from an out of town speaking gig. And I was asking God, was there something left for me to do in Cleveland? Because the experience that I had just had by going out of state, speaking, being paid very well for that, having all my travel expenses covered, I said, this is really how I feel my life should be and how I want to take care of myself and my lifestyle is by speaking and flying and traveling and being paid well for that. So, God, is there something else you want me to do in Cleveland? Because maybe it's time for me to pack up and go. If my mission here is done, like I'm ready to start moving elsewhere so I can get in this other rhythm. And literally within a few days of putting that prayer out there, I got a phone call from some people who live in my city, and several residents of Maple Heights had reached out to me and said, we've been watching you and the work that you do, and we think you're awesome. Would you consider running for office in Maple Heights? We feel like you have a lot that you could offer the city. And I really was kind of blown back because I was thinking I never had aspirations to be a politician. Like, I talk about politicians as a freelance journalist. I'm the fourth part of the fourth estate, government watchdogs, talking about news and current events and all those type of things. I don't know that I want to become a politician. So, but considering how closely those two things happened, me putting this prayer out and then getting that phone call, I said, well, I better pray about this. And so I did pray about it. I told those individuals, hey, I don't know about this. Let me get back to you. And I reached out to a relative of mine who is mayor of Newburgh, New York. Shout out to my cousin Torrance Harvey and mayor in Newburgh, New York. And I also talked to some other people that I trust. And pretty much everybody said, if you decide to do this, we will support you every step of the way. And so this has really been something that I feel like God and the universe and angels brought to me. It's not something that I went looking for or to do per se, but here we are, a week or two, a little more than a week outside of what we have about 12 days left until November 2nd.
So literally, this is an opportunity of sorts that found you. Um, we're in the midst of an election season that includes the mayor's race here in Cleveland and a congressional race where we will determine who the next congressperson will be to replace Marsha Fudge. I'm just wondering, in this new chapter of your life, uh, what your thoughts are about taking such a quantum leap from what you have been accustomed to.
I mean, it's been a faith walk the whole time. Other than talking about and researching politics and politicians, like I said, I never really saw myself venturing into politics in that way. But what has become the distinction for me is that really the focus is and should be, and definitely in this time, should come back to public service. There's a lot of politics and politricks going on in all levels, local, state, national, where it seems like this whole aspect of public service has somehow gotten convoluted, and really thinking about and staying centered on what's best for the people is where I think the energy needs to return. And so with me, my whole life work up to this point and my particular personal brand and my company, the Courage to Change Total Life Empowerment, is ultimately all about helping people tap into their courage and finding their voice. So to be honest with you, I look at it like I'm having the opportunity to continue doing that work, but to bring that to governance in a way. And should I be elected, my intention is to stay very connected to helping get Maple Heights residents more involved in what is happening in city government, especially those city council meetings, and encourage, maybe create a campaign around helping to encourage and inspire more of our residents to find their courage, to use their voice, to get involved with literally shaping the changes that they want to see happen in our city. Like at the end of the day, elected officials are working for us. But I think it's very easy to kind of put certain people in office and then maybe think, okay, well, they're going to take care of this or take care of that. But then we find ourselves sometimes being still dissatisfied, and it's much easier to complain from the sidelines than to do the courageous work of actually helping to shape and create the change you want to see. So for me, I look at, I'm actually coming to see this as an opportunity to continue doing the type of work that I've already been doing, but just in another capacity.
Yes. So I heard you talk about being a public servant, and I know that in some realms there are folks who get into public service, public service, and then they end up just collecting a check. Obviously, from what you just shared with us, you have a different mission. So I ask you this, and I know that you probably fielded a lot of questions and done quite a few interviews as you're on this path and on this journey. What would you say you will be able to do to create that engagement on the part of the citizens in Maple Heights? Because when you look at elections and you look at turnout and you look at the extent to which people participate in the political process, many folks are unaware of the fact that they do have a voice other than the vote. But when you talk about engaging folks in the meetings and having them be able to speak to the things that are important for them. When we look at the political landscape right now and we see the lack of participation in the process, it could clearly be something that could change the outcomes of many of the decisions that are made in those walls should you become president. So, what do you see as the role of citizens in a new paradigm if you're able to accomplish getting into office?
So I think a couple of things. One, if we look at the last presidential election, we could clearly see that people will participate in the process. We had the highest numbers, I think, of people coming out to vote ever, I believe. Whether people were voting because they were so passionate about change, or whether people were voting because they were so agitated and like irritated they were so irritated out of their apathy that they were tired of what they were dealing with, that they moved themselves to vote. So I think what we have seen is that people will participate if they are inspired or galvanized one way or the other, right? The thing is, how do we harness that energy and help make that participation real, not just for like a general election? And so what I found is that in getting out and canvassing in Maple Heights with the residents that I was able to connect with, and I'm still connecting with, people want to be involved, but they also don't want you to BS them. And quite a few people, feel like the only time that I really see whomever I voted in office is when these elections come up. So how is it that you are sufficiently representing me and you don't even know what I need, or you don't even know what the issues are? Because I don't see you the same way I saw you when you were courting me to sign your petition, or courting me to put out your yard sign, or courting me to do something that was of immediate benefit for you being hired or rehired. So, should I be elected? Part of what I would like to focus on outside of the administrative responsibilities of being council president is to really create a campaign of sorts around community involvement and going back to the basics of a campaign, getting out and canvassing, connecting with people on a regular basis, connecting with the council people, and maybe doing, regular smaller community discussions to help people understand how do the city council meetings function, how do certain aspects of government function, where do they have the opportunities to get involved and make their voices heard and build relationship and create changes. Like, it's not enough just to tell people that they should get involved. I think elected officials should also be committed to helping educate the people on how to do that. Now that's not saying that residents don't have some responsibility to take initiative themselves. Yes, we do. Everybody has a role to play. But if you are actually in this for the spirit of being a public servant, then I think there needs to be recognition that the community may need to be taught some things before they feel confident enough to own their power and not feel intimidated by the process. So, yeah, like creating community dialogues, maybe more intimate than just in the council meetings. I was talking with some people last night who came to a council meeting for either like their first or second time. And they were saying that they thought smaller conversations on a regular basis in the community would be awesome, because the council meeting can kind of feel a little bit intimidating to get up and stand up. And, a lot of people have a fear of public speaking. So, these are some of the things. Creating a youth council is another idea that I have. Young people should have a place and space to make their ideas and their voices heard. And especially, if we want our cities to be more safe as it concerns young people getting involved in things like crime, then there needs to be a space and a place where they can be able to share their thoughts about what they would like to see happen to make the city someplace that they enjoy living. that they feel they have a vested interest in and that the city really genuinely cares about them too. And then taking it from just conversation to, okay, how do we involve them in the process of helping to create some of those changes? So these are just like a couple of the ideas that I would like to work on should I be elected.
Okay. From where you're sitting, what do you see as the issues that Maple Heights is plagued with right now? I know that you've probably done a lot of research, a lot of homework to find out what's on the hearts and minds of the residents. What do you see as the major issues in Maple Heights?
Well, there are a couple of things. One, public safety is definitely a concern that's very big. We have made a lot of progress. Shout out to Mayor Annette Blackwell and her current administration for the progress that they have made during her 2 terms. But public safety is still a very big issue. Infant mortality for African American babies in particular is very high in Maple Heights. That's an issue. Dealing with and holding absentee landlords accountable for properties that they need to be much more on top of maintaining, or making sure that their tenants, if they have tenants, are taking care of those properties, is an issue that the city is addressing. From a processes standpoint of view, I think there is also a communication disconnect that needs to be closed. A lot of the citizens feel like they don't really know what's going on, whereas from the government's side, it's kind of like, well, we have a website, we publish things on social media, the information is out there. We don't understand why residents don't feel like they know what's going on. So, like, bridging those gaps. Also, encouraging people to pay their property taxes is another issue that needs to be addressed in Maple Heights. The mayor was sharing recently in her State of the City address how even though property values have increased in Maple Heights by like 23%, which is incredible, that Maple Heights also has the highest delinquency rate of unpaid property tax. So when people are complaining about wanting to see certain streets, repaired more quickly, or other services that a city is in charge of providing, people are maybe not making the connection that if you have high rates of people not being on a payment plan or escrowing their property taxes and paying those on a consistent timeline, that affects the city's budget, because those property taxes are a huge revenue source for the city. So these are some of the issues that I have been hearing and learning are still needing to be addressed. But public safety for sure is probably one of the top. I shouldn't even say probably. It is one of the top concerns of everybody in the city. Continuing to make the city more safe.
Yeah. Well, listening to several of the debates that occurred with the Cleveland mayor's race, and watching the campaign of Shontel Brown and Nina Turner, and that whole congressional race, you know, the idea that public safety is the number one issue, it was just recurring. Every time folks get together, it's
Crime.
always about safety. And it's kind of ironic that we talk about safety because we've had this controversy since George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and it's brought to the surface this idea that for some reason, as residents and citizens, we don't feel safe, and we're dealing with this whole idea of defunding the police or funding the police more, and so again, it's an issue that seems to be at the uppermost place in the minds of people around the world. But I think about this whole idea of police response, and why is it that people think that they would be safer if there were more police on the streets, when in actuality the police kind of show up, or they're called after something happens, and there's really nothing that they could have done to prevent what was going to happen or what happened. So I'm just wondering in my mind, just thinking creatively right now. And I know this is not an issue for you to resolve. Perhaps it's just something for you to reflect on. But how do we get to a point where the police become less important to us and become more responsible for creating a safe space in our minds and in our environment and in our lives? I know it's a deep question, but I'm just curious what you
I'm
might
here
think
for the
about that.
deep, though. You know that. I'm all
Oh,
for the deep.
all right.
So it's a couple of things that I would say in reference to that. One, when we talk about public safety, moving from like a general to a more specific, statistics show that crime is pretty much up everywhere the last year in relation to COVID in a way, which is kind of ironic, right? But crime is pretty much up everywhere. So that's one thing. When it comes to more or less policing and feeling safe and how much the police can or cannot do, there's a fine line and balance, I think, that has to be achieved. One, we have to start being more valuing life more and considering each other more. I think if COVID should have taught us anything, it should have shown us in a very blatant way how everything that we do or don't do is intimately connected to one another. So we are literally moving in a time now where we cannot afford to kind of function in a bubble and not think about how our actions may or may not impact each other. There would not necessarily be a need, I think, for as much police presence if we were more effective at policing our own behavior. But a lot of times we're so distracted or, only thinking about ourselves that we're not really tapped into policing ourselves. There were ancient societies that didn't even have like a term or concept for police because they were so effective at policing themselves. They might start their day off with, a code of rules or laws about how they were going to conduct themselves every single day. And then that was what was carried out in their interactions with each other. Unfortunately, we as a collective still have a ways to go to function on that, right? So I think the extent to which communities start being more responsible for policing themselves in our day-to-day conduct and also the standards that we're setting for our youth, then that might counterbalance needing to have police involvement, right? There's definitely the need for police reform, for much more training to be in place for those who may choose to do police work. I think higher percentages of those people should actually live in the communities that they're policing. These are all things that need to be addressed, and I don't think they're quick fix. They're quick fix answers. But like one thing I'm finding, somebody asked me recently online in a conversation. They said, "Well, if you're elected, what are you going to do about crime, and what are you going to do about, the streets being more clean or less trash or garbage in certain areas?" And I said, I think they were specifically emphasizing on like picking up litter or something. And I said, honestly, the question is not what am I going to do? The question is, what are we going to do? And I think when it comes to, these different issues, that is ultimately it. Because if one person could do it, it would have already been done. If a city council of 7 people and a mayor and administration could have done it for a population of what, 23,000, 24,000 people could have done it, that problem would already been solved, right? So it is literally like there has to be this mindset shift from thinking somebody else is going to do it other than you. And yet you have the right to like complain about what's not being done, and yet you're not actually finding how can I get involved to try to make a difference. It takes a community. And so, like, one thing that I'm very clear about, I'm not going to be scapegoated for people's unwillingness to kind of personally challenge themselves to move beyond the sidelines of complaint to the courageous work of creating change. Whether I win or not, I've stepped up and done something courageous by getting involved. And so my message in my campaign is, you want to see something change, first try to educate yourself and find a way you can get involved. And getting involved doesn't necessarily mean that you got to run for office, but it could be, you know what, on Saturdays when I go out and walk in my community, I'm going to take a bag and just pick up trash. Or I might invite a neighbor to join me in doing that. Or if there's some kids in the neighborhood, like, there are so many creative ways and solutions that could be offered if people just get a little more involved, a little more educated, and take a little more responsibility. And see, there's a difference. If you have 1,000 people that say, you know what, we're going to get involved, we're going to take this little chunk, that 1,000 people can do a whole lot more, maybe on that particular issue, say picking up trash, than 7 people on a council would necessarily be able to do. Right? So I don't know. That's how I know that was kind of a long answer, but there has to be a paradigm shift. And I think paradigm shifts come when there are people who are willing to be courageous examples of what the paradigm shift may look like. And so, in my own way, that's why I'm running. That's why I've been obedient to what I feel God said back to me when I prayed. This has not been an easy journey. To be honest with you, I'm like so looking forward to November 2nd, November 3rd, so a sister can take a real nap.
I'm going to tell you, Imani, I so appreciate what you just shared because, as you were speaking, I was thinking about something that President JFK said long ago. He said, ask not what you can do for your country, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I'm also thinking about the fact that public safety being the number one issue means that you have an entire population that is just living in fear. Now, fear has risen to the top of everybody's radar because of this pandemic that we're in right now. But even before then, the consistent theme in all elections. I mean, if you go back to Bill Clinton, it was the three strikes piece. You can move forward in the previous administration. It was about getting tough on crime. Being tough on crime means that everybody is scared that something is going to happen and we need all these police to protect us. But then, you raise Bebe go out on the streets and terrorize everybody. You can't blame the police because Bebe is dysfunctional. You mentioned the fact that crime is up during the past year. Well, there are a whole bunch of folks who don't have jobs because their jobs disappeared and they get desperate. And it's an idea it's a mentality of survival. It's flight or fright. That's what so many people are stuck in right now, and they're not thinking creatively. When you talk about the whole idea of litter, well, who puts the litter on the street?
Right.
It doesn't just magically appear. I mean, I live in Cleveland. I live in the hood. When I walk to the post office is about a 3 or 4 minute walk for me. I walk to the post office and I just see trash lining the fence that goes along the fence for my subdivision. And I notice the nature of it. And most of it is junk food, it's garbage. People are consuming garbage and then discarding garbage, and it's all a part of the mindset. We live in this consumer oriented society without people having any personal responsibility. I'm looking out the window. There's some kids in front of my house. One of them is eating a candy bar. They finished the candy bar and they just tossed the wrapper. And I'm like, you putting it right in front of my house. If I go outside and I have a conversation with that person about throwing trash in front of my house, there's going to be an argument. There's going to be negative vibrations. It could be a teachable moment, but it's a hard moment. And as a homeowner, when you think about having those conversations, you also think about the possibility that somebody might come back as an act of retaliation. So you're less likely.
But then again, that kind of, and I agree, right? I'm a homeowner too, but here's the thing. That kind of perpetuates the cycle of fear even more. So we have to challenge it at some point. And sometimes it's more, sometimes it's how you do it, right? If you start off with a kid like, get your A and don't throw and blah blah blah, like, no. But if you can kind of control your own triggered emotions and say, hey, young man, can I talk to you for a minute? I saw you enjoying your candy bar, and that's cool, but how come you threw it down on the ground and didn't just carry it to the trash? Do you recognize that you might create more work for somebody like me to have to do, and it's in front of my house? Like, having a conversation. We have somehow, like, on the brink of losing the art of, like, actually communicating with each other, not talking at, but having courageous and also compassionate conversations. There's this woman that I met recently who is a property manager for, I think, like, condo or apartment complex in Maple Heights, where the individual units are each owned. And sitting with her and listening to her speak about how she had to confront some things in keeping the quality of life of that community where it should be for the owners, this woman had to demonstrate so much courage and, potentially face retaliation by standing up. And she literally is only like 4'11". But one thing she said, I'm not going to live in fear. And at the end of the day, I, along with everybody else who lives here, deserves to have a certain level of peace, deserves to have a certain level of the environment looking nice and peaceful. And she said, and if there's somebody who can't abide by that, then I just tell them flat out, like, if you can't abide to this standard, then maybe this is not the place that you should be. And then there's other consequences for that. Like she was saying, how they start implementing certain fees for things if people were not, putting their trash where it needed to go, or X, Y, and Z. So my point in sharing all of that is, like, at some point, we ourselves have to examine our own relationship with fear. And to what extent are we willing to challenge it? And sometimes, I forget who created this acronym, but sometimes the things that we fear, we make them much bigger in our minds than what we might actually encounter if we challenge it. But how we challenge it is important. If you're talking to somebody else's child about something they did in front of your house, or littering, then yeah, you might want to kind of, like, turn your own energy down some before you go talk to that child. Like, coming out the side of your neck, cussing at them or X, Y, and Z is not necessarily going to move you in a direction to get a solution. It might create more problems. But how many of us slow down in our present, or, are aware enough inside of ourselves to say, okay, I'm not going to bring all this emotion to the situation, even though I'm ticked off. I'm going to come with the opposite energy. A lot of us don't. I'm not going to say a lot, but these are things that we need to think about in our interactions with each other. And
Well, yeah,
it takes
and
work.
I think it also goes to the fact that we don't routinely go through an educational process that gives us any understanding of conflict resolution. So,
and the kids mirror that. I was just talking to someone, a friend of mine from Nigeria, and he was saying how the children are really the true reflection of what's going on with the village, right? The children really demonstrate what's going on with us as a society. So if the children are off the hook, what are they modeling? What
right.
are we giving them to model? And I think,
Right.
like, this generation of young people, to me, is a much more show me, don't tell me. I respect your example more than your explanation. I'll respect your example along with an explanation, but don't talk at me. Don't tell me. Like, I feel like this generation is very much the show me and make it plain type of generation. So, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that. Like, these are all complicated issues. None of it is quick fixes. I think anybody that has the concept that one person alone is going to be able to fix all these problems is not realistic. But I think what is more realistic is each of us really looking at, well, what part can I play?
Yeah. That just goes back to the example that you gave us a few moments ago when the person asked you, well, what are you going to do about this? Well, when are you going to stop throwing trash on the ground?
And here's the thing, like the energy that we use to complain. Some people just like to complain. And they're looking for places where they can kind of like take that and plug it into a socket and just ride the energy of complaining. But that same amount of energy that you use complaining could be redirected in trying to come up with a solution. Either yourself, with other people who care about the issue, or getting educated. I mean, it just gets to be, staying in a place of complaint is very, that doesn't require courage. And to be honest with you, I feel like it's kind of like a weak energy. It takes strength to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to see how I might be able to help change the thing that I'm complaining about.
Imani, this is not a commercial of sorts, but if I were head of a marketing firm and I was in charge, I would focus on in terms of your skill set is your understanding and your ability to communicate. What you just shared with us just clearly illustrates that because you're operating from a place of understanding life. And because I know you and I know that you've been through so much that has brought you to the point where you are right now, again, what you just communicated, it clearly illustrates your understanding of how folks are. What you just said was kind of like it was kind of like a motivational piece. And I happen to know that you're a motivational speaker. And to motivate people, you have to love and understand people and have compassion and care for them and want to see them do better. That's what motivation is all about. You want to take somebody from point A to point B in terms of their understanding. And because of that understanding, the ability to affect new outcomes, change, because we're dealing with the things that we're challenged by in life. That's what motivation is all about. So if I were to endorse, I don't know who your opponent is, and quite frankly, because of our relationship, I'll just be transparent and say that I don't really care much because I want to see you succeed. But I say that just to say that, because I don't think that you've been tainted by politics, because some people get into politics and they see it as a gain game. They get in office, they cut deals, they make money, they play by the rules, and they benefit from it. But then the people, the constituents, don't benefit to the same level. I don't see that as your motivation. I really see that you have a genuine interest in improving the quality of life for the people in Maple Heights. So I just want to wish you well in this journey. I know that you're looking forward to November 3rd because of all the things that you've been through in the few months that have transpired since somebody planted this idea in your head that you might make a good city council president. So I really do want to wish you well, and I'm confident that should you be elected city council president in Maple Heights, it is going to make a difference. It takes people who have a genuine interest in being a public servant. Not everybody really wants to be a public servant. For some, it's an ego trip. It's a chance to say I'm
There's
in
a lot of ego in this. I
oh
mean,
yeah, yeah.
I yeah, sorry I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
No,
But
I
thank you.
yeah. It's an ego driven paradigm. I mean, you know, what would motivate somebody to be mayor of the poorest city in the United States, from what we've been told, to know the constraints of budgeting, to know that dollars are shrinking. You mentioned property taxes. That's a conundrum in and of itself. Because when you look at a city like Maple Heights, well, a lot of the residents are not property owners; they're renters.
Well, the majority are still our homeowners, but
Yeah, but
they're
I'm just saying, in terms of what's going on right now, because properties are being purchased by a company called BlackRock, and they're driving the prices of homes up, and those homes are ending up not being owned by people who live in them, but they end up being owned by someone who rents the house out to someone for a profit margin that's very thin but very lucrative for the folks who are the property owners. So, and what you're seeing now, based on what I read a couple weeks ago, is that a lot of people are being displaced and moving into the suburbs, and they're moving into the suburbs as renters. So even though Maple Heights might have a base that's primarily homeowners, that's something based on the trends that could change.
mm-hmm.
So, when you look at property taxes, well, property taxes, they go to support public education.
Yeah, the schools in Maple Heights, I believe the schools get a big chunk of the property taxes. And then I think Maple gets like some income tax. So yeah, you're right. The schools get a big chunk of that revenue. But taxes
Yeah,
are still a huge revenue source for the city. So
right.
and then people are affected by what's happening in the bigger economy too. So, part of why property taxes may not be paid on time is, like you said, a lot of people have been out of work. So,
That's true.
you know,
And the other aspect of that is that if you look at the age of
yeah.
people in the city, and they no longer have children in school, so they are they're directly supporting something that doesn't really directly benefit them. There's an indirect benefit to having a higher level of education in your community. But if you don't have children in the public school system, you don't have a necessarily vested interest in the school system, but you're burdened with supporting that. The funding model for education has been flawed for some time, and year after year after year, this is a subject that gets swept under the rug, and they haven't changed it, and it's something that needs to change. I'm not saying that you as a city council president can have a major impact on changing that, but it is a stark reality of funding for public education, and it's something that needs to change at some point. I mean, like me, I live in the city of Cleveland. I've been in the same house since 1992. I don't have any children, but I've been paying property tax all this time for something that doesn't directly benefit me. Is it fair to me? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe I'm conscientious enough to say, well, I still want to support, because, I generally vote for levies, even though many times there's not a direct benefit to me. But as a responsible citizen, I'm contributing. So I'm helping to pay for the new lakefront state park, and I'm helping to pay for computers in the classroom for children, and I'm helping to pay for all those things, even though there's no direct benefit for me. I'm saying all that to say that we have laws, we have situations, they need to be addressed, and we can't always be talking about back to the police putting more folks in cruisers riding around our neighborhoods because for whatever reason we think that makes us feel safe. So went around a tree, coming back to the starting point, and wishing you all the success in the world, sister. I'm going to be plugging for you.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to be praying for you,
Thank you.
and hopefully we'll see a positive outcome come November 3rd.
Thank you so much. And if any of your viewers happen to be Maple Heights residents, you can go to my social media, especially here on Facebook, Imani Capri for Council President, to see the things that I've been posting. My website is now up. Go to what is it?
HTTPS
Yeah,
colon
thank you.
forward slash forward slash.
I'm tired. When I tell you I'm tired, HTTPS colon / electcapri.com. You have to have that HTTPS part. It's not www. We'll get it. I don't even want to go into that right now, but it's HTTPS colon / electcapri.com. That's my campaign website. You can learn more about me, about my platform. If you care to donate before this election is over, there's a link in my Facebook and Instagram bio to Act Blue. You can donate there. The Cash App is # Friends of Imani Capri. Thank you to those people who have made donations to my campaign. They have been super helpful with getting yard signs and these cool campaign bracelets, out to people, thank you cards, snacks for meet and greets, all that kind of stuff. So thank you. And we will see what's in the cards, what God decides the outcome of this will be. November 2nd, November 3rd, whatever the outcome. I don't regret having taken this journey. I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of people. I think one of the things that has really opened my eyes, I kind of just kept to myself before I did this run. Kept to myself in terms of I'm much more aware of and informed about what's happening in Maple Heights than I was as a resident. And so I still will find a way to add value and give back, whether I'm doing that as council president or just continuing as a homeowner in Maple Heights. But I think the thing to really, if I could just really emphasize one or two things in closing, is just this concept of democracy is not a bad thing in my mind. A government for the people, by the people, but it needs to be all the people. And in order for that to really live up, in order for this democracy in this country to live up to our greatest ideals, we, the people, have to take more ownership of our government, of our process. And that means being present, getting educated, using our voices, and staying involved. It's not enough just to put somebody in office and then, okay, you've delegated this to them and you think they're going to act on your behalf and do the right thing. We have too much evidence to the contrary. So, in order, I think, to keep this democracy that is dangling on a limb from falling off the cliff, we have to take full ownership of it. And that comes from our voices and getting involved and definitely participating in the process. Even though the process may be imperfect and flawed, it's not going to get any better by just delegating somebody else to do it and to clean it up. And like I was sharing with someone who came out to council meeting in Maple Heights last night, it's a very interesting thing what happens when you have more eyeballs involved and more voices involved. When the people get more involved, they apply pressure. And elected officials are kind of forced to have to remember who they work for, who put them there. So if they haven't gotten a fire lit under them, they start to be reminded, oh yeah, I have constituents. And my constituents are not just sideline complainers. They're people who actually get involved. They're showing up to the meetings. They're coming to my office and saying, we need to create some legislation around this or X, Y, and Z. So the numbers of the people are much greater and more influential. And I just think we don't have enough. I don't think we have enough courageous people saying that and pointing that out and helping citizens tap into that. In the case of Maple Heights, 25,000 people, 24,000 people is greater numbers than 7 council members. And not saying that all the council members, not disparaging any of the council members, but I'm just saying, if you had an average of, 1,000 people being involved regularly, that 1,000 people can move the needle. Those 7 people are going to be like, it's 1,000 people that are regularly tapping in to the council meetings. They're somehow doing stuff out in the community. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the piece that I think we sometimes, as we the people, need to be reminded of. And when you have the power in the numbers, or you can potentially, did it mean everybody may not have to do this huge thing? It's just like each of us take this one piece. If 1,000 people pick up one piece of trash, that's 1,000 pieces of trash picked up in your community.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be an earth-changing thing. It's just, you know what? Let's have a, like one of the taglines in my campaign is, it's a we thing, not a me thing. And that's how I really feel. If there's a critical number in our community, or any community, that will unite around what they can unite around, instead of focusing on where we're divided, and get involved, who knows how you can move the needle or create change. But you got to be courageous enough to do it.
Well, I think what you shared earlier about the energy that is required to complain, and you take that same energy and you transform it into the energy that it takes to make a change. It's energy much better used. So
I had somebody ask me recently, if I believed in systemic racism and critical race theory. And I pretty much answered the question. First of all, I told this person that question would be better directed towards somebody who was running for school board, because I'm not running for school board. But then I also let that person know that I said racism is real. I've experienced it. However, I'm much more from this place and space. I want to focus on where we can find something to unite around. I don't want to spend my energy and time debating with people about things that even from how you ask the question, we probably don't agree about. But if you want to talk about how we can, make our city more safe, or if there's a lot of, trash in your neighborhood, or how many, do you know when the city council meetings are, and that there's a section in the city council meetings for public comment, I'm much more focused on that. So I think I share that just to say we can cut out a lot of wasted time and energy if we just get a little more sophisticated on what we're going to focus on. What's more productive? Me arguing back and forth with that person one way or the other, and I do have my thoughts about that, but in the context of what I would be doing as council president, and in reference with this person, what would having a debate about that create? If you're going to vote for me based on my answer or lack of answer to that, Godspeed and make your own decision. But I don't want to take the bait for useless use of energy.
yeah, and the bottom line is the debate is just it's the raw material for conflict, but you never really resolve anything, because in a lot of situations there's no right or wrong. It's just how you feel about it. But I fully agree. I think we have to be centered more on what we can do to create change, rather than talking about what's wrong with that. I mean, with critical race theory, well, yeah, it's what they teach in the classroom, but what about what you teach at home? When a child walks into the classroom armed with information, knowledge, and wisdom that you provided with, it doesn't matter what they teach in the classroom, because the child already knows what the real situation is. They know what the real truth is. And that allows them to walk in that classroom critically thinking about what they're being told. We have a responsibility to those that we bring up in this world to give them everything that they need to survive. And we can't depend on others to teach our own what they should know, because they're not going to teach them what they should know. So that's another topic for another conversation. But again, I just want to wish you success, Imani. You've done some wonderful and just great things in your trajectory, and I intend to see more greatness coming from you as you continue on this journey of advocacy and communication and all the gifts and skills that you have. So continue to do what you do. And regardless of the outcome of this upcoming election, I know that Maple Heights will continue to be the great place that it is. And I will owe some of that to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And big ups to Domino. I know Domino is waiting for her to get in the house.
Yeah.
You know, where mommy been? So have a beautiful day. And then
Thank you. You too.
and we'll check back in with you on November 3rd, no matter what happens. And we'll get the full report after you get your nap.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
All right. Peace and
Peace and
blessings,
love.
sister.
Yep.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.